Well, good morning. Welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. How are you all this morning? It's a beautiful morning here. Somebody said in a comment the other day, they said, you're that jacket you're wearing is a heavy jacket. I think it was a different one than this, but he was right. He says, it must be cold there. And it's chilly in the mornings, which is just the way I like it. I like to sit outside and drink my coffee. And it's beautiful. It's going to warm up later. And I'll be out working in the hot sun, so I enjoy these chilly mornings when I can drink my coffee and do a bit of writing and talk to you all. Speaking of writing, and I'm going to be talking about phony experts on this one. I'm telling a story that some of you have heard and really enjoy, and for those of you who haven't heard it, I think you will too, and it really brings it home. We got a lot of people out there talking about things that they don't know about, and so this is kind of a public service for you all, plus a story that you're going to enjoy retelling probably. So anyway, but speaking of writing, and I know that they're loading up my videos and other people's, not just me, with these gun control ads, right? What is it? Is it something promised from one of the shootings? You know, some group. Well, this is not brought to you by them. This video is brought to you by my book, The Reversion, my first book. I shouldn't say my book. It's the first of my 5 books of the Stonemont series, The Reversion. And it explains in some detail how to prepare for, survive, and then rebuild from a total collapse of the country and the world. And as these things keep happening, more and more people, of course, want to know this. So people have asked me, and I've always put the links to how to get my books. You can either get it through Amazon and trade paperback or Kindle, or you can get them directly from me. And I've always put in the information section up there, right down here, or is it drop down? I've always put there how to get it. It's right underneath the, come join us on Patreon, the Patreon link, which I hope you all will, because I put a lot of great stuff up over there. But I've realized a lot of people haven't seen that, so I've started putting the information also in a pinned comment that should be at the top of the comments section here, and it gives you the way you can order the link. Excuse me, the link to the Amazon, or the address that you can get them from me personally autographed. So however you would like to do that. I'd love to have more Stonemonters out there, and you Stonemonters, those who have read the series, you know what I'm talking about. We really enjoy that, and I'm going to have kind of a major announcement coming up fairly soon on this probably. And yes, I'm busily working on number 6, which will be out who knows when. Okay, so this is who is bringing this video to you today, and the Second Amendment, right? Okay, let's get started on this. Before we talk about phony experts, a couple of things I just saw in the news. A couple of nurses and a doctor got stabbed out in an ER somewhere in California. I don't remember where. It doesn't matter. It happened. These things are going to be happening more and more. You all know that I have background in healthcare security, and we dealt with this stuff a lot. People coming in for anxiety. Well, this guy came in for treatment for anxiety and ended up stabbing a couple of nurses and a doctor, and they got him secured in a room, or he did, and they had to call in the PD, and SWAT came and finally got him taken care of. Luckily on this one, no one died, but be prepared for this stuff to happen more often. And because we got a wacko world full of wackos. And there's getting more of them every day. On another disappointing item, which it reminded me of the Second Amendment, that seal that they say, how should I put this? That it is said shot bin Laden. What's his name? O'Neill? Something O'Neill. I never took to that guy, to be real honest. You know, I don't know, just something about it. He talks a lot. I'll just put it that way. About things that, in my opinion, shouldn't be talked about. He says he came out with a tweet, apparently, that the Second Amendment, agreeing with Uncle Joe, right? The Second Amendment is not limitless. Well, Mr. O'Neill, good to have your input. You know, why you thought you should include that, it's your business. You know, it's a free country. I disagree with you 100%. And people have asked me, well, what do you think the limitations should be? And maybe we'll talk about this for just a second. You know, they'll say that and we all know the purpose of the Second Amendment is not to hunt deer, it's not to do anything else, it's to protect ourselves against an oppressive government. And in order to do that, just like the colonists did, they have to have weapons that are equal to or superior to the government's. Just pretty obvious to me, right? Has nothing to do with muskets or anything like that. And despite of what the liar-in-chief said, yes, you could buy cannons back then. Many people did. Many people had private armies back then. You could buy cannons. You could buy anything that the government had. And so people say, well, do you think that a person should be able to have an Abrams tank? And I say, you bet. And they say, do you think that a person should be able to have an F-15? I say, you bet. Do you think a person should be able to have a satellite? You bet. Do you think a person should be able to have and I won't even say this on here, but you all know what I'm meaning. I could say this. Do you think that a person should be able to have a directed energy EMP weapon? You bet. Look, here's why. Okay. And do you think that a person should be able to have one of those big boomers? And you all know what I mean. And my answer to that is, where do you draw the line? Because, see, as soon as you draw a line, you have established that a line can be drawn. And the Second Amendment is either absolute or it's not, and I am an absolutist. And how do you protect yourself against an oppressive government if you have inferior weapons to that government? And when it gets beyond the point, I'm a big political solution guy. You know that. I have warned people against, don't go too far ahead. Try to fight this politically as far as you can. But what happens when it gets to the point, or if it gets to the point, where that is just not possible? Then you need whatever it takes. You bet. Okay, phony experts. Boy, we've got a lot of them, don't we? For the average person coming onto YouTube or any place else, there's no shortage of people who are more than willing to spout off and sound very important and very smug and very, very like they know what they're talking about. And to a neophyte, a person who doesn't have the experience, I talked about experience the other day, didn't I? Who doesn't have the experience to know the difference, they can be easily swayed by an authoritative voice or a gruff voice or a cynical voice or whatever that sounds like the guy's really been there. Well, and many times the person has not really been there, but they have developed the ability to look and sound as if they have. I want to tell a story about when I was in DEA school. And this is a long time ago. This is back in, I don't know, or sometime around the early 80s. And like I say, I don't even remember the year. Some guys can spout these years off when they did this. I can't. Once I'm done with something, I move on. But it was back then. Early 80s, in 1980, 81, 82, something like 81. I'm trying to think when again, it doesn't matter. So I'm at DEA school, right? And what this particular school was for was not for guys who were in the DEA going through that, but guys who were from local departments and who were going into undercover narcotics units across the country, and the DEA provided this training course for us who were going to go back to the local drug units and things like that. So it was a good time. It was a bunch of guys. By the time you got there, you had to have been experienced. You had some time on the street. You had showed that you were of a particular type of person who would do well in it. Now, for the most part, because there were guys later on that I washed out once they had gone through this and got back to the unit, and they just weren't going to make it, and I washed them out. But for the most part, we were a bunch of experienced cops, street cops, who not only had experience as a cop, but most of us came off the streets to begin with, so we were no dummies. It was a good time. We learned some things. We learned the laws and some stuff that was just silly, to be real honest. For instance, they told us at the time that cocaine was a perfectly legal drug. A perfectly safe drug. And there wasn't anything addictive about it. There wasn't anything bad about it. But that there happened to be a law from way back in, 30s, something like that made it illegal, so they were going to use this to go after certain groups of people. Now, this was the extent of the government's understanding of cocaine at the time. And that right there started me on my descent into questioning the position of the government, because I thought, well, if there's nothing wrong with it, why is there a law against it? And why are we going to go out there and start enforcing this? Okay. Well, later on, of course, we found out, cocaine is it's a dangerous drug. But that wasn't the position of the government at the time. I know that will surprise a lot of people. So anyway, while we were in this course, most of the instructors were jam up guys. They had been on the street, they had been undercover, and they had a lot in common with us, and we got to be friends with them. And so we'd go to class during the daytime, and then at night we'd go out to dinner, and then we'd go out to the go-go joints afterwards, until they shut down, and grab a few hours of sleep and start all over again, because that's the kind we were. Well, one day a guy walks in, and it was none of us wanted to be in this particular class. It was a compliance class, and it was about how to make cases on doctors who were improperly prescribing, diet pills to housewives, and some of Quaaludes and things like that. Back then, Ludes were big. And just stuff like that. Nobody wanted to do that. Nobody wanted to go in and act like, and make a case on a doctor for giving diet pills to housewives. We wanted to be out in the streets working the cool stuff, right? And but we had to go, so we did. So we're sitting in this room, and in walks this guy. Now you got to picture this. The room is full. There's I don't know how many there were. Probably 100, maybe not quite that many, of just hardcore old street cops sitting in this room, and we were all, most of us carried at least one, sometimes more than that gun. We all carried at least one. Many carried more than that, and you've heard me say that once I got back to the unit, I started carrying more. I carried 3 plus a knife. But at this point, everybody's in. There's enough, as I say, there's enough guns in there to take over a small South American country. And this guy walks in, and you couldn't see it. You know, nobody carried their guns outside. I mean, outside their clothing, which we called clothing, not cover garments. And but you didn't see it, but we know that everybody, you know, it's the safest place in town. This guy walks in, and he's got a buzz cut and what they used to call a crew cut, and he's got a gut on him, and he's carrying this big old shiny 1911. Well, anybody with any sense doesn't carry a chrome gun, number one. There's no reason to show it and be proud of it. And this guy came in, and from the get-go, he was authoritative and you know, like he knew everything and gruff, and he started talking in all sorts of tactical terms. You know, and I mean, it took, I think everybody within 30 seconds, we all pretty much had him pegged. Tactical term. We didn't talk like that. Nobody talked like that. He's going to tactical this. I don't even remember what he said, but that was the and nobody used the term tactical back then. But he was trying to act like he'd been there, done it all, and telling stories and everything. And I'm sure that had he been out, you know, giving, and this is the guy that goes out and gives speeches to, you know, Rotary Club and civic clubs and things like that. And I'm sure that every time he went out and gave a speech out to one of those, they all, wow, man, and they'd go back and tell their families, we heard this guy, he is really something. He really knows what he's talking about. He's done this and he's done that. He was so impressed. But we weren't that kind of people. And so we knew this guy was a nitwit from the get-go. And we checked him. We asked some of the DEA guys, and at first they were a little bit hesitant to answer, but finally they did, and we found out that this guy had been with the Department of Agriculture, and Jimmy Cotta, when he did a bunch of rearranging of some federal agencies, and, you know, to create the Department of Education, to buy votes from teachers and all sorts of things. And it was right after, I may have mentioned this before, it was right after the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, the BNDD, was switched over to DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency. So I went in right after it stopped being the BNDD. And matter of fact, I even had a T-shirt that said BNDD on it, that it was always my goal. I don't remember if I ever did to make a buy wearing that shirt. But anyway, we found out. So he had been with the Department of Agriculture, and when they realigned things, they did away with his job, but his GS rating, I think that's what it's called, if I remember. Any of you federal guys out there, let me know, GS. Because we didn't use that designation, was so high that they had to do something with him. He was a supervisory level, right? So they had to do something with him. And because they were building out DEA, the next big boogeyman was drugs, and which really the war on drugs was nothing but a jobs program for law enforcement, because they never wanted to win it. They wanted to continue it and just, you know, pump more money into the DEA and whatever. I think I've talked about that before. But anyway, they had to find a spot for him. Well, DEA was growing, and they found a spot, and they put him in the training cadre of DEA to teach compliance. And do you know what the guy had been with the Department of Agriculture? A pickle inspector. That's right. Yep. And he came in and strutted around and talked all tough and gruff and tactical, and and wanted the world to think he knew it all. Well, folks, there's a lot of pickle inspectors out there slinging their hash. Be wary. Test the information. You know, if you don't have the ability or the experience to test the information, I'll tell you one of the first things to do, and that's run it through a common sense filter. Common sense. You know, it's amazing how far common sense will take you if you think a guy is just going a little bit too much. And you can see, you know, just the occasional thing in there, just the occasional cracky, you know, whatever. Take it with a shaker full of salt and compare it against what other people with experience have to say about it. And you can, you know, people with experience can tell other people with experience. People without experience have a more difficult time. That's why I get so many people that email me or put in an occasional comment, many a times of which I delete, saying, hey, have you watched so-and-so? This guy, he really knows what he's talking about. And you know, very often I do know what they're talking about, and I go, nope. You know, and I don't say anything to them about that. I just go, Okay, be careful of pickle inspectors. I'm going to go do some work. You all have a good day. Hope there's a good weekend. Remember to stay safe always. All the craziness that's going on in our world. That can happen anywhere, at any time, to anyone. Be aware, be prepared, always be ready. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And the world's gotten to the point to where you pretty much have to prepare in all areas, which you should anyway, but a lot of people haven't. A lot of people have kind of, you know, they get their favorite thing to prepare for, and then they're kind of left out in the cold when something else happens. Don't let that be you. Prepare for everything. And I tell you, that's another thing that this book will tell you about. This shows you how to prepare for everything in not a negative way. It's a good novel about good people that you'll like, the bad people you won't like, and they get taken care of. And but it really approaches it from every aspect. I have so many people over the years, people said I've been in preparedness for years and years and years, and some even instructors, and they say, I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't thought about that. I learned something there. I had one person tell me they learned something on every page. I don't know if that's, you know, every page, but that's what they said. So anyway, love to have you get the book. If you want an autographed copy, it takes longer than if you get it from Amazon. And remember, there are no limits. The founders didn't say there were any limits to the Second Amendment, regardless of what O'Neill says, or Uncle Joe. And you all have a good day. I'll probably talk to you tomorrow or Monday. Bye-bye.